Hi everyone. So this is a brief video to help you with assignment 1, which is due. So when is it due? On the 15th of December. This is worth 15% of your total mark and it will be returned on the 9th of January. I hope to return it a lot earlier than that because I would like to get the marking done and complete before Christmas. The length of each question is set in the question. So have a look at the question, each of the questions for the length. And of course, you've got to submit on Easts. And the submission is a Word document, but that Word document needs to include some Excel output. So let's look at the presentation. Where Excel is required in the question, I need you to cut and paste your spreadsheet results and the formula view into your Word document. Now the formula view needs to include the column letters and the row numbers so that I can see that the formula is working properly. All of these spreadsheet requirements are set out in the spreadsheet section in Getting Started. So have a look at the Getting Started option on the left-hand side of the online subject. So look at that Getting Started menu on the left-hand side of the online subject and go through the spreadsheet requirements. Now, for some questions, you need to write a report, and in resources, there is a Faculty of Business Report Writing Guide. So make sure you download that and have a look at that writing guide. There's also a set of criteria at the end of the assignment, so make sure that you look at those criteria for each question to ensure that you are meeting the criteria that you want to meet to get the grade that you want to get. Okay, now, I think it's important to actually think about these presentation items up front before you get started so that you don't have to go back over it when you're halfway through the assignment. Now let's go through the questions. Question 1 is about Porter's strategies. Now we discussed these in the online meeting, and they're briefly identified in Chapter 1, but there's some more about them in Chapter 12 in Section 2. Now you need to actually do some additional research on Porter's strategies, his 5 forces and his strategy models. And of course, research is something at a master's level we expect students to be able to do. And of course, your first port of call is going to be Google or Bing or whatever search engine you prefer to use. Now, when you're doing this question, you need to apply this specifically to ACE trailers. And I've set out in this little table the best way to set this question out. It doesn't need to be a report, it doesn't need to be a long essay, it needs to be a table which sets out the 5 forces and explains them quite succinctly, and the Porter's strategy model, and explains each aspect of the strategy model quite succinctly, and then how you think Ryan might adopt those 5 forces and strategy to his particular business. So that's a good layout for this question. Moving on, question 2. We look at the direct step and reciprocal methods of allocating support department costs. I will go through an example in the online meeting, and there is a video on using the reciprocal method. And for this one, you need to use Excel, and we look at a particular methodology in Excel, one of the Excel add-ins, Solver. So make sure that you look at how to add Solver to your version of Excel, and follow the video on how to use Solver for doing the reciprocal method of allocating support department costs. Question 3, we look at first in, first out and weighted average process costs. There are examples, 726 and 728, 729, 730 and 731. These last for really an extension of 728. I'll be going through bits of this in the online meeting, and I will be preparing some videos before we get to the topic so that if you don't go to the online meeting, you can download individual videos on these particular questions. Question 4 is broken up into 2 parts. We've got cash flow forecasting and budgeting. And cash flow forecasting is an important aspect of budgeting, and it is crystal ball gazing basically, but it's an important skill for businesses to have. And you will do more on forecasting in ACC544. You've got to actually do some research and find at least 2 cash flow forecasting tools and develop a report that actually evaluates these tools. So it's probably good to, if you get 2 or 3 of them, to set up some tables and some criteria for evaluation and see how each of these forecasting tools meets those criteria. So there are a number of cash flow forecasting tools available. So do the research, use Google or Bing, and again, we're expecting you to be able to do this sort of research at a master's level and prepare this brief report on cash flow forecasting tools. You might actually find these tools might be useful for the business that you're working in. Now, part B of this question is actually doing some simple budgeting. There's an example of 6.11 that we'll be going through in the online meeting. This is not a very complex question, and you should be able to deal with this quite quickly. Okay, so that's a brief summary of what you're required to do for this first assignment.